Hello and welcome back to the Gold Newsletter channel. Welcome to our studio here in Vancouver. My name is Kai Hoffmann. I'm the @JR Mining Guy on Twitter and the CEO of the SOAR Financial Group. Really appreciate you joining us here for a company introduction. It's Robert Boyd of Endurance Gold, a company we've been following for a while, and we chatted at VRIC. I have to admit, I fumbled the ball on the audio at VRIC, so happy that you came down to the studio to re-record our good discussion there. Robert, thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you, Kai, for having me, and I'm sorry your initial recording doesn't work out, so I hope I can answer all the same questions again.
It's a bit of a deja vu moment for sure, so we'll probably run into that. It's like, oh, we talked about this before, right? So I hope I also asked the right questions as well, because some of them I've known the answers to.
Right? Well, sometimes I'll try to steer you to some of the most important information on who we are.
No, it's like we'll keep it fairly high level. This is a company introduction. We'll keep it about 20 minutes. Let's start with an introduction before we get into some of the details. Run me through who is Endurance Gold for 60 seconds, and then we'll
Endurance Gold is a junior mining company, venture capitalized. What's unique about our company is we've been around for a while, but we still owned at least about 50% by insiders. 3 of us on the board own over 50% of the company. I own about 6%. So we're very aligned with our shareholders because we are big shareholders ourselves. And we've been exploring in the process of generating kind of projects over a number of years now, and our focus at the present time over the last few years since COVID has been our Reliance gold project in BC. And we're spending our own dollars and raising the capital for that project because we think it's a real gem in terms of what we've identified there. But we also have other projects that we've sold or farmed out in the past, and at the present, and own a couple of royalties and other things related to districts as a result of that. So really our focus now, though, is advancing this one key project that we've got and trying to identify strategic partners for our project we've got in Alaska as well.
No, fantastic. Really good start to the story. Let's start with the first follow-up question is cap structure. It's always the second one I ask. Our viewers will know that because it also puts us on a level playing field here as well. You mentioned that you're a big shareholder, but how does the cap structure look?
Well, we've got about, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's about 155 million shares issued and outstanding. There's not a big overhang of warrants or options there, and we had a we had a working capital of about 2.5 million in the last financials that we put out in September of 2023, and since then we raised about 1.1 million as well. We've been funding primarily this one project in BC, but maintaining our two other key projects that we own as well.
Fantastic. Perfect. Let's talk use of proceeds a little bit in a second here as well, because you're spending money at Reliance Gold, at the Reliance Gold project. But before we talk about the project, let's talk about the region where you're at, because I think that is quite interesting as well, and I think it'll lead to some of the excitement as well, I think.
Yeah, well, I'll focus most of our discussion with the time involved on our Reliance project, and it's located just 4 hours drive north of Vancouver here. Drive through Whistler, pick up your Starbucks coffee, and in the summer you head over the hill and you go down into the former Brien mining camp. And the Brien camp has produced over 4.2 million ounces of gold. It is the biggest historic gold producing camp in the province of BC, and it's an orogenic type gold system. So although it's relatively young for an orogenic gold system, it's identical. The Brien camp is identical to our Archean type gold system. So when you find a deposit, they go significantly at depth. What's unique about our new discovery is it's only 10 kilometers away from Brien. It's got the same fluid chemistry, the same age-date relationship, but it looks totally different. It's breccias, and it's fine gold where there's some coarse gold associated with Brien, but it does represent the same orogenic gold system. It's just a higher level of exposure of an orogenic gold system and a lower pressure temperature regime associated with brittle deformation. So analogies might be the Fosterville gold discovery and mine in Australia, the Kittilä mine in Finland. These are higher level type orogenic gold systems that that are sitting often in brittle deformational regimes. So they have a different structure to them. They're not crack and seal veins. So what that does is it opens up the potential that we're in an orogenic camp where one mine has already produced 4 million ounces. We've got a new discovery on surface now that has every potential to deliver a similar size discovery, but was totally overlooked by the old timers.
Let's zoom out a bit more. Just talk about the history of the project as well, and maybe some of the targeting you've done in the past to sort of come up with the results you have, because the market is quite impressed by them.
Yes. Well, I used to work for Homestake Mining Company for about 10 years, and one of the projects we looked at when we were evaluating whether we go forward or look at Brien camp, other opportunities came to our attention. And one was owned by a prospector in that camp that actually owned this property that we now have. And at the time, he located his targets by dowsing. He was an oddball, but to give him credit, he did drill one of his dowsing targets and got a drill intersection.
Can I stop you for a second? Like, what's dowsing?
Well, dowsing is one of these types of where people use a stick to go hunting for water.
We have the wishbone you go look for. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Okay, glad I asked actually.
But what's unique about this gentleman, when I visited with him, when I was with Homestake, he had a map on his kitchen table and he used a plumb bob, and he located his drill holes with a plumb bob on a map on his kitchen table. So
awfully scientific.
It definitely doesn't have the rigor of a typical scientist, although he attracted attention based on his success, he didn't attract serious money in terms of what needed to be done on the project. He didn't like geologists, and then he just kept drilling around that same little target. So the real potential of his little discovery was never recognized until we took on the project. Ultimately, that gentleman passed away, and the company was reorganized he was involved with, and the Crown grants that were sitting on this discovery returned to the Crown, and we acquired it from two professionals that are active in the mining business here in BC, who acquired it through our map staking methodology, and in 2018 we optioned it from them in late 2019, and we immediately did the systematic type of work because there was a strong alteration system. And then our first targeting method was opening up the old trails in the area, and then we also used biogeochem, which is an unusual technique, but the property was covered by Douglas fir, and biogeochem studies done at the University of BC here show that Douglas fir really likes to soak up arsenic, and most gold systems, especially orogenic gold systems, have an arsenic-associated signature typically, and so we used that methodology to identify a target that was 2 kilometers in strike length. We used that to explore and do the soil sampling, which was more difficult in our area because there's a problem with Mount Meager about 50 kilometers away, blew up about 2,500 years ago and dropped all this white pumice ash all over the property. So it was very difficult to get soil samples. You had to dig through this process. That's part of the reason we used biogeochem, and then we then identified with soil sampling, got up to several ppm gold values in soil sampling, and then moved on to channel sampling and our first drilling program in 2020 with RC drilling, and our first diamond drilling program in 2021. 3 years of drilling now have delivered 84 diamond drill holes, with about 70% of the holes delivering ore grade type intersections over 1.5 kilometers of strike. And 15 of those holes have better than 60 gram meter hits. So they're intersections of in excess of 10 meters of 8 grams or so. So really significant discovery statistics, all near surface. And now we're at the stage where we haven't got a resource yet, but we're defining the areas that we need to focus on for following plunging chutes along trend at depth and building out a resource at some point in the future.
Just coming back to the two gentlemen you brought the project from, like, what was the deal like? And I'm just curious if there's any royalties on the project.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a right to earn 100% interest in the project, and it's based on providing them shares in our company as well as cash payments, and the requirement to do a minimum amount of work to earn our interest. That work we've more than exceeded. It was about a $3 million work requirement over multiple years. We've exceeded that. we haven't finalized our cash and share payments, and then once we do vest, we'll own 100% of it, subject to about I think it's a 2.5% royalty, but we have the right to buy down half of that, 1.5% of that down to 1%, and leave the vendors with a 1% NSR type royalty.
Let's talk about like how you're planning to advance the project. Like the targeting sounds very scientific and compared to the old methods that have been applied on the project in the past. But let's talk about the next steps as well. You've identified the target area, obviously. What do you need to do to get to a resource stage now?
Well, there's still a lot of exploration to be done. There are gaps. For instance, we've got a new discovery that we made that the old timer hadn't found, called the Eagle Zone, and we've defined over about 550 meters of strike. But between that zone and the original Imperial Zone that he'd done some work on closer to surface, there's a gap in there that still needs to be explored. The system's still open along trend to the southeast and on trend to the northwest. So there's near-surface type exploration that needs to be done to understand the limits and size of the system. And then, of course, the phase of drilling that we had a goal to accomplish in 2023 was to chase the system at depth and fill in that gap between Eagle and Imperial. So that's the type we need to do, that type of exploration, and then go back and then do some tighter space drilling on the existing discoveries that we've made near surface to deliver a resource to 43-101 standards. But a big objective of our program is not to get too focused initially on doing a resource. Our goal of our system is to say, is this thing big, right? We want to be able to deliver in our exploration program the comfort that when we deliver a resource, we can show to the public and to ourselves that this system, not only over and above the resource, has got the potential to potentially deliver a multi-million ounce discovery. And we feel pretty comfortable, independent type of work that's looked at it feels pretty comfortable that we are moving towards the potential for a million ounce system already.
Oh, fantastic. How are you planning to finance this? I think, given the market sentiment, it's not an easy question to ask and probably not an easy question to answer as well. Money is an issue. Like you raised 1.1 million, but usually that doesn't get you too far. So I'm curious, like what your plans are, thoughts are. Yeah, because I know you have other projects as well. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we have to look at all of our strategic options with respect to how we advance the project in this kind of market conditions, because we're big shareholders. There's 3 of us on the board who own in excess of the 50% of the company, and we recognize that as shareholders, you don't want to be diluted at too low a price. So you want to look at a situation that you have to weigh the possibility of looking at strategic options of combinations with other entities, strategic financings with a mid-tier company that sees the potential for us to deliver, or the possibility, there's always that possibility too, under these kind of market conditions, that it might be better to dilute shareholders on an ownership interest, as long as we can deliver the ability that we're not going to dilute them for many years or forever, potentially, if we can design a transaction like that. So we have to look at all of our options. In the meantime, you just have to weather the storm. This deposit and this discovery is not going away. We can drive to it year-round. It's 5 kilometers away from a hydroelectric facility. Right in front of us is another hydroelectric reservoir that 50 kilometers away has a dam behind it. And those 2 power plants deliver something like 10 to 20% of the power into the lower mainland of Vancouver here, in the lower mainland area of Vancouver. So we're in an area that's an industrial area. It's got cheap green power if we ever want to look at developing a project and lower our carbon footprint. We also have community right by. The town of Goldbridge is only 4 kilometers away. So we've got a great resource, a great discovery, and it's not in the Golden Triangle. It's right on a road. We don't have a Tim Hortons nearby, but we do have the restaurant and bar at the Goldbridge is only 4 kilometers from our property. So we don't we don't head there to drink at lunch, but it's
The
just
finest wining and dining in town.
yeah, and so we've got a very supportive community there because it is called Goldbridge for a reason. It's a gold camp. The gold was first discovered in this camp in the 1860s. Two main discoveries were confirmed in about 1864 when they went into this area. One was on Cadwallader Creek, which turned into the Bralorn mine, and one of the other discoveries that was recognized at that time was called Gun Creek, and that's just right across in the Bridge River Valley, right next to our property. So it shows that there's been gold in this system generated not only from Bralorn but from other discoveries like we're dealing with, but never recognized in the past because they're breccias. They aren't quartz veins, and so when they weather, they just look like orange muck on surface. They're not quartz veins. So that's why they were overlooked.
Interesting. You mentioned you have a project in Alaska, and you also own a few royalties in the company in Endurance Gold. Is there a way to monetize them as well? I'm just fishing a little bit here, but I'm curious if there's a way of non-dilutive revenue.
Well, we own 100% interest in a project we call our Elephant Mountain project in Alaska. It's in central Alaska. Again, it falls within our philosophy of acquiring projects that are road accessible. So it's road accessible in central Alaska, right near the town of Manly Hot Springs, in a former placer mining district that drains this area. So it's a classic reduced intrusive hosted gold setting. The geology and geological model is identical to these major discoveries that are coming out of the Yukon, similar to Kinross's Fort Knox mine as well, which is in Fairbanks, which is about 60 kilometers away. So we're in that belt. We're in that belt that can deliver big discoveries, and we control all the best gold prospects, about 6 kilometer scale targets over about a 15 by 5 kilometer district. We've got the best projects under control in a de-roofing intrusive complex that's generating some pretty interesting targets, one of which we did drill, and we got about 140 meter intersection of 0.6 grams per ton gold in a classic intrusive hosted setting, reduced intrusive hosted setting. That needs a lot more work on it, so part of the limiting factor on that project is that if someone's going to go and step into it, they need to be able to step in and do at least over 2 years, at least $4 to $5 million in drilling. Just stepping out on these different targets that we've got, because they can be large tonnage, low grade type settings. There could be high grade potential because as well. So we're looking for a strategic partner to look at that, and in light of the success that's going on in the Yukon, this potential area in Alaska has just got as much merit as what's being discovered in Alaska. In fact, the mines there are more gold produced out of reduced hosted gold settings in Alaska than there is in the Yukon. But the Yukon is really attracting the exploration interest and hasn't been there as much in Alaska. So we're trying to identify a partner, and there is some interest there. And
would you say it's the extension of the Tombstone Gold Belt?
Oh, it's absolutely the extension.
Put that in your PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Well, well, once upon a time, it used to be called the Tintina Belt.
That's old. Like the new marketing team came in and said it's the Tombstone Gold Belt.
Yeah, or the Yukon-Tanana terrain, and we're stuck in that wedge right between the Yukon and Tanana River, and so it was the name.
I don't want to get too technical, but I think the Tintina Gold Belt comes down, and while the Tombstone Gold Belt cuts across it a little bit.
No, they're all one and the same. They've just been offset by a big regional structure. Gotcha. So they're all mini names for the same kind of belt, but it's a belt where these Cretaceous age intrusives often generate the major gold discoveries.
The royalties you own on in Endurance Gold, can you monetize them?
We own one royalty that's in the Rattlesnake Hills district, because we had about half of that district, and we sold that land position subject to a royalty to GFG, and so GFG is not particularly active on that, so that's one royalty. So, and then we also own some modest royalties in smaller land positions in northwest.
We don't have to dive into details there. I was just curious. I'm just fishing a bit for money.
Yeah, and we do own one rare earth niobium project in the southeastern Yukon. So we're in a good geological environment there. But that project where, there are some issues in terms of what's happening with the land withdrawal, staking restrictions in those areas. We own the core land position, but right now we're sort of treading water on that project, and it's got potential to deliver it's got potential. It's never had a drill hole in it, but it's an early stage play that looks similar to Nechalacho and Strange Lake deposit, these intrusive hosted rare earth systems.
Gotcha. Let's get back to Reliance. Just like, what are some of the next steps? Like, what are the plans for this year as well? Like, what are you going to do with the project?
Well, we have a drill contract in place now, and so our plans at the present time is we're in the process of planning our program right now, and our focus at the present time is getting ourselves ready and present at the PDAC conference, because we got the core.
Are you doing core shack there?
Yeah,
as well?
we've been accepted to go into the core shack. We also have a 4A booth, so we're busy trying to get ourselves organized for that. So there's a lot of meetings that are going to come out and are part of that conference while we're in. So we won't be getting out to announcing our plans and probably until March, mid-March or something at some point. But our objective is to try and be back and do a major drilling program to fill in those holes, follow the system at depth, and hopefully have funding where we can dedicate a rig just to fill in the gaps as well, and not only the gaps, but to bring intersections to a resource type classification. And so that's the plan. But in the meantime, we can also do other work. There's a little bit of metallurgical test work that has to be done. We've done enough to know that there's no fatal flaws in our project, but it is a fine gold system, so you have to do a lot of test work to make sure you can deliver a product. So
fantastic. No, Robert, sounds exciting. Really appreciate you coming by the studio here and running us through the Endurance Gold story. I'll definitely see you at PDAC. I'll make an effort to stop by the core shack as well. Take a look at the rocks.
Yeah, well, we've got 6 boxes of core.
Who's got to schlep that?
Well, it's on the truck right now. So
it's on the way.
On Monday. So, but it's on the way there from Vancouver, and we needed multiple boxes because we got a 4-day booth and the 2-day at the core shack. So you'll see me running back and forth between the booths on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Sure, put some comfortable shoes on.
And there's an orogenic gold session too on Monday at the conference. And if you've got the full registration, you can go to this orogenic gold system, and Richard Goldfarb is going to be one of the speakers at that session. And Richard Goldfarb and Craig Hart actually did a study on our Braylorn camp area, and they're the ones that recognized the potential in their seminal study dated in 2017 for Geoscience BC. They recognized this shallow orogenic type potential in the Braylorn.
And we got to say, Greg Hart is a chairman of Snowline Gold.
Yes, he is.
As
Craig's,
well. So,
yeah,
he's been instrumental as well. Like the Birdall's done all the legwork, but he's been advising, I think, on that as well. He's been really prominent in that Tombstone Gold Belt.
And his study in our camp was an academic study that was done in 2017. But I continue to talk to him, and he's continually supportive of the fact that this is definitely got potential for a shallow orogenic type gold system.
Fantastic. Robert, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in Toronto. Everybody else, I'll see you virtually, I hope. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this conversation, please leave a like, leave a comment as well, because it helps us. Do we ask the right questions? Like, yeah, sometimes we do free interviews, we do paid for interviews as well, but we want to ask the right questions. So please leave some feedback. We do want to know, is this something you're looking for? Is this helpful to you? What questions should we ask as well? Like, we do want to get better, and this is for you. We're not doing this for me, to be quite honest. Like, we want to educate you. We want to bring you the stories, and we want to showcase good stories as well. So let us know how we're doing. Please leave the comments, and we'll be back with lots more. Thank you so much for tuning in.